Welcome to Get Celebritized. I'm your host, Aurea McGarry, bringing you amazing guests each and every week to help you earn more so you can live more, live a big, vivacious, juicy, wonderful legacy life, and you can give back more to the people and causes that matter most to you, because your life is so rich and so full. You have what you need so you can give the overflow away to those that you want to help. So without any further ado, I'm excited beyond belief right now to introduce you to a gentleman who we might have been separated at birth. He is so on the same page as me. You are going to love this man, Sebastian Rusk. He's a keynote speaker. He's a comedian. He's an author, a digital storyteller, and a podcast launching specialist. You heard that right. He's been building online communities for the last 15 years, and he has made it his mission to help people tell their stories by starting a podcast. So let me bring him on and introduce him to you. Sebastian, get up here and let's talk. Hey, welcome.
What's happening? It's great to be here. Thanks for having me.
It is such an honor to have you here. I've been watching YouTube now for the last week on different people's shows, your own YouTube you're talking about, and you have the goods. We're on the same page. So I'm so glad you're here to talk to my audience, because sometimes they need to hear from somebody else what podcasting can do for their business. So before we dive in deep to what it could do for their business, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, my name is Sebastian Rusk. I am a speaker, comedian, and the founder of the Podcast Launch Lab. We help folks go from idea to a launch podcast in 90 days or less with our podcast launch solution. I've been doing that for the past 8 years now. It's become my life's work, and I firmly believe that starting a podcast will change your life and your business if you let it.
I like that you say if you let it. What is the biggest obstacle you find that people think about when you talk to them about, should I jump into the podcast world? Is it really right for me? What are some of those obstacles they're thinking about that stop them from jumping into this amazing world?
I think just being able to commit to doing the work. And also people don't get clear on why they actually are starting a podcast. I think a lot of people just start a podcast just because everyone else is doing it. And instead of really giving some thought to it and figuring out exactly why they're actually doing what they're doing and what can be produced out of the work that they're doing once they get clear on that why.
You know, it's so true. When I was listening to some of your YouTubes and your show, you said something really important that I want you to elaborate on this. People also tend to think, well, if I start a podcast, then I have to get sponsors because I want to make money and I need to get sponsors right away. And they're thinking that route. And you said the exact same thing that I've been saying for years about that topic. So tell us a little bit about that misconception about getting in, do a podcast, make a lot of money with sponsors.
I think a lot of people want to be the next Joe Rogan, and I hate to burst everyone's bubble, but that's probably not going to happen. Why? Because, well, he's an anomaly, number one. Number two, the biggest podcast in the world in 98 countries. Most people will absolutely never get there. So instead of trying to emulate what's already out there, if people could just figure out a way to stay in their own lane and create whatever their category of one is with starting a podcast, they're far better off. If you want sponsors for your podcast, start a podcast and put together a solid brand that's attractive and strategy and go after people that believe in you, your vision, what you're doing, and they see the opportunity of being involved with exactly what you're doing. If people pay you $50 a month to sponsor your podcast, it was $50 more than you had before you actually got that sponsor on. Sponsorships for podcasts in the grand scheme of things, in order to get podcast sponsors, you need to be doing 10 to 15 downloads, 10 to 15,000 downloads a month consistently to even get into an ad network. Back to the original thought that I had, which is most people are never going to get there. So instead of saying, hey, I want to go out there and get sponsors, if you're not going to get out there and create and write your own rules for what you want to do with sponsorships, it's probably never going to happen. What we teach here at the Podcast Launch Lab is start a podcast because it solves all of your social media content problems, and it allows you to get in front of people that you can do business with that you wouldn't ordinarily be able to get in front of if you're trying to book a meeting or trying to do a deal with them or whatever the case is. Asking someone to be on a podcast is a completely different conversation And when you do that and you interview somebody and you talk about what they're doing, kind of like what we're doing right now, you're building rapport with that individual by default. And once you've built rapport, you've established a relationship. And when you are able to go and do that, they know exactly what you do, or at least they should. And without trying to pitch them or sell them, naturally the conversation comes together where they're like, hey, I didn't even know that you sold widgets, but we're in huge need of widgets, and we should definitely schedule a time to chat about what's possible with your widgets. So I think realigning your priorities on and bringing yourself back down to planet Earth with your expectations, taking your head and pulling it out of the clouds, back down to reality, and really understanding that you're starting with nothing at ground zero, and you actually have to create a brand that's attractive, very important. And in addition to that, you've got to create some sort of value proposition where someone says, you know what, I get what you're doing. I completely understand. I'd love to be part of it. So it's a matter of, it's not what you're saying. And I think it's more of how you're going about what you're actually trying to do. There's a lot of bad podcasts out there.
Yeah,
the branding's deplorable. The hosts are terrible. The content is absolute garbage. And people think it's the greatest thing in the world, or at least they're trying. And most people are probably better off just giving up.
It's so funny you say that. Absolutely. And you mentioned something I've always done that I love that you said this too. You said when people, you want to pick somebody's brain, or they want to pick your brain. This is such a great way to do that. And you said, which made me laugh, I know you're a comedian, you said you wouldn't go and ask somebody to pick their nose. So why you ask them to pick the brain?
Yeah, exactly.
I was just laughing. It's so true, but you do get to pick your brain. Like, what am I doing here right now? I'm having an amazing man on my show that helps people launch their podcast and does all the production, does all the soup to nuts stuff that you're probably thinking, oh, I can't do one because I don't have $1,000 studio. I don't have a quiet place. You think of all the things you can't do when you probably don't need all the stuff that you're thinking you need anyway, but you need somebody like Sebastian and myself to tell you, you don't need all that stuff. You need to be good though. Because what's the number? It's like 400,000 new podcasts launch each year, but there's only like 40,000 downloads every day or something, like something really ridiculous, because most people quit. They start with a big idea and then they don't keep going because they don't know how. Talk to us a little bit about why that's not a good idea, just to jump in because you may think everybody else is, but not to have a plan of execution and know what you're doing before you start.
I just think it's an absolute, complete, total waste of time. I mean, why are you even starting in the first place? Our ideas aren't always the best ideas, but people are so terrified of feedback, honest feedback, people that actually tell you the truth. Imagine that they're not even willing to understand how someone views what they're actually doing and creating. They just create it, they put it together, and they put it out. And because they decided that they wanted to do it, which in theory, there's a lot of power behind, making a declaration for what you actually want to do and actually starting and doing it. But at the same time, making sure you're doing it correctly, meaning that it's actually something that someone wants to consume and listen to. So I think that realigning your priorities and making sure that if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. Is the brand clean, transparent, and easy to understand? Do people resonate with it? Are people listening? Do people even care? Right. I think these are all things that people fail to understand and consider when they first get started.
And you're saying, would people even enjoy it or like it? I'm at the belief that even like with social media, and you said everything so spot on when you're talking about the podcast is the best content creation. And then you repurpose it into little micro bite-sized pieces for social media. And you don't have to have a large audience. If you have, and tell me what your thoughts are on this. If you have a small niche, you solve a problem that a group of people have specifically, where it's not just, I talk to women in business. Well, what kind of women in business? Older, younger, startups, scaling? That's like a wide audience you can niche that down so far. So what are your thoughts on having that smaller but fanatical fan base? Like if 1,000 people were in a room and you were able to talk to them and every one of those 1,000 people had the pain that you solve, wouldn't life be sweeter and better than trying to just talk to the world? And maybe somebody in there has the pain you solve. What's your thoughts on that?
I mean, I think most people aren't even going to reach 1,000 people. So how about 50 people? And I think that 50 people could still make an extreme impact when properly executed, as far as being able to communicate effectively to those 50 people and teach them and show them something that it can in turn provide value to their life and give them some sort of offering that you can come along and help them based on what you actually do. The podcast must be tied to your business in some form or fashion outside of just being content. It's got to have a strategy tied to it where you actually are the people that you're creating content with and having on your show are your prospects. I mean, that's the, and I think that's going to be that way for a very long time, being able to have a podcast that allows you to interview people that are in your pipeline that you actually want to do business with and new people that you get to meet as well.
Which is the fun part. And I hear, again, you're such a funny guy. I've seen you on stage, you speak into the audience. And you were talking about a mortgage broker. The last thing you want to do in the morning is wait, listen to a mortgage podcast. Talk to us about if somebody feels they have a more boring job, but the world needs financiers. They need realtors. They need mortgage brokers. They want to learn about that. They need the service. How do you marry those two where you feel your brand and business is more on the boring side, not entertainment side? How do you correlate that into having a podcast?
I think that being able to have a podcast and spend 30 minutes recording a podcast episode and chopping it up into 5 to 10 pieces of micro content solves a lot of your social media content problems. And then also being able to, number two, build a content catalog of the content that you're creating from your podcast episode. So at the top of the funnel is the podcast episode that drops every single week. Next in line are the pieces of content that get created from that podcast episode. The third step in that process is, by default, you're creating a content catalog that you can tap into at any time in the future, because it should be evergreen content. If you're creating time-sensitive content, if you have a sports show where you're talking about last Sunday's Dolphins game, I hate to break it to you, but no one, and I mean no one, is ever going to go back and listen to the highlights of what happened on last week's Dolphins game, because they've heard the highlights on ESPN on Monday. Again, right. It's an example that most people can go and resonate with.
So are you saying if they should have a podcast that's in their career niche, or can it be on something that's similar, but that will help people know, like, and trust them to want to know more about their business? Is there a way to marry those two if they feel they're not in a sexy industry like health and fitness or murder mysteries and things that people are like just grabbing to podcast for, but they feel they might be in more of a subdued but necessary and needed business, like maybe even life insurance or mortgage brokering or things like that?
Yeah, I'm always a big fan of being able to find something that, because there's not a lot of sexy businesses out there but they still want to do something. And fine, cool. Let's find something relative. So it's not directly about your business, but what's something that would actually complement your business? Financial advisors, my favorite, my favorite people to say, no, I can't do that because of regulations, which is total nonsense. Why? Because if I was a financial advisor, which will never happen, but if I was a financial advisor, I would figure out a way to create a podcast to talk about the world of money and investing and saving and planning for a future and things that can be done that are non-regulatory, that have nothing to do with talking about numbers of stock market investing, returns, percentages, or any of that jargon at all. Or I would just start a podcast about bass fishing and talk about my bass fishing hobby and how much I absolutely love it, because I'm going to attract people that also love bass fishing, and they're going to resonate with my content. And by default, because they're in my fan base and they're a listener of my show, they already know what I do. Sebastian, great financial advisor down in Miami, got a fantastic show about bass fishing. In fact, I love the show so much, I've decided to schedule a call with him and see if he can help me out with my finances, completely sole and separate. Who would have thought you could find your new financial guy based on a bass fishing podcast? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. In my world, I find, I'm a huge animal lover, and animal lovers love other animal lovers. We know that if you love animals, you're a good person, right? Well, not all, but you resonate on that level of, oh my gosh, you get me, a dog lover, a cat lover. I've met some really cool clients of mine that are on my television network because we related on Instagram for our love of possums. Totally irrelevant of anything you would think of a sane person, but I absolutely love possums. I feed possums outside. Somebody saw me just doing a little fun because, we do a little bit of lifestyle every now and then. And then we connected, and she actually became the first TV show host on my network, and she does a rescue for animals. I don't do a show about rescuing animals, but she did. But we resonated on the level of our passion, fanatical passion for animals. So I so get you. If you're a fisherman, if you're, whatever it is, if you love books, I mean, you have a book club, whatever, you're right. It's a way to attract people to just have that synergy, that's something in common. You can say, I like that person. They get me. We're on that same page. What else do they know? And you feel more comfortable because we know when we watch television and we watch a podcast or back in the day, radio shows, whatever, we feel like we get to know these people. Don't you feel like, I'll use a television as an example. When Matthew Perry just passed away, me and my daughter, I mean, we're huge friends. We feel like we lost a member of our family. And that's because you also connect with people you watch, you learn from, you laugh with. You're a comedian, Sebastian. There's people just love your comedy and would just love to work with you because you're funny. They resonate with you and they feel like because they watch you all the time, maybe download your podcast every single week. You get into not just their head, their life, their living room, and become part of the family just by default. What do you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, your content, when properly executed, should build rapport with your audience and the people that you're creating the content for. Absolutely. That's why they keep coming back.
They really do. They like you, and I always tell people there's room at the top for everyone because we could do the exact same thing, but certain people are going to resonate with me, certain people resonate with you and somebody else. And it's just all about, that personality works for me. The way they teach works for me. People, I've had many coaches in my life and they could teach the same thing, but one stood out and it worked better for the way I learned versus somebody else. It wasn't bad. It just didn't work for me. So let's talk turkey about making money. Let's talk about, can you give us some examples of yourself or somebody, maybe a client or two, because you don't have to give names, but that it really has made a financial difference by starting a podcast, whether they made more clients, by association, how it works, just a little bit of diving deeper into, okay, who really makes money doing this? Does this really increase your business? Is there some success stories you can share with us?
Well, like I talked about earlier, being able to have a podcast to build new relationships with people that you want to do business with is probably the most undefeated and underrated strategy out there. So that's the best way to make money with a podcast, is to be able to, you can also monetize it through brand deals and sponsorships that you create. People are not going to come knocking on your door and say, hey, I'd love to sponsor your show. Here's a check. That's not going to happen. You've got to go out there and create that, hunt that down and identify the right people. But the best way to monetize a podcast and make money with it is to be able to interview people you can do business with.
Absolutely. Do you have any great examples or story to tell on that? Because I know you're a great storyteller.
I mean, that's what we teach here. When people come to us and say, hey, we want to start a podcast, how do we make money with it? We put together a strategy that helps them interview people they can do business with and also create content above and beyond the podcast that allows them to remain in the newsfeed consistently and stay top of mind, which then also converts to new business. So that's probably the most effective story. And I do the same thing with my show as well. I try to identify as many people as possible that don't have a podcast up to really great things, get them on the show. And that's as well as being able to, the people that I meet at the speaking opportunities that I get the opportunity to do, being able to invite those people that I know are a potential client on the show and interview them and then ask them when they're starting a podcast has been extremely effective as far as a strategy of networking with my podcast and also monetizing it.
For sure. And tell us a little bit about your podcast. What's the name of your show? And what's one of the best memories you have from bringing somebody on your show that turned into something fantastic?
So I've got two shows, which I don't recommend doing. Do not start two podcasts whatsoever. I'm a rare breed. But my main podcast is called Beyond the Story, and that's my tool to be able to network with people and tell their story and build rapport with them and identify whether or not they're a fit to be an agency client. And then my other one's called Podcasts Suck, a podcast about starting and growing a podcast. So I feel like it's my responsibility to share my expertise, and I do that through means of this new podcast that we launched a couple months back that's doing very, very well. And the reason I started that is because I've already got the information. I wrote a book that tells everything I know. I create content around everything that I know. I deliver talks about everything that I know. So this is just an extension of being able to go and do that. I think the most memorable experience, what happened last year or the year before last, when I had a prospect who's in a mastermind group that I'm part of, hit me up and say, hey, I'd love to be, I said, hey, let's get you on the show. And she hit me up and it's like, yeah, let's do it. She's a CPA. And we get done with it. I'm like, you should really start a podcast. She was like, I know we're a few months out. It's like, we're probably getting to do that in, Q4, blah, 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 whatever it was. And I got her, we got done with the interview, and then she's like, you know what? Let's do it. Send me everything. Let's get signed up. And I'm like, okay, fantastic. Do you want to know how much it is? And she's like, sure. Tell me how much it is. And she didn't really care. And it was that point in time that I realized that has become my niche. It's that people just absolutely do not care how much it is. They just want to work with me. And when you're doing it like that, you're doing it right. And so I've been able to weed out the whole, the looky-loos and the prices, and we're here and a budget, and I'm getting the money together, and I got to talk to my wife and my business partner and blah. I just don't tolerate it at all whatsoever. It's a one call. You got one shot to sign up when we talk for the very first time, or we're never going to talk again. And I think being able to put that healthy boundary in place allows me to attract more of exactly who my ideal client is. But that happened through that podcast interview.
It's funny how much you go through things like that. That's great. Like, oh, this is what I want to work with. This is who and the how I want to work with, for sure.
Yeah, it's a non-negotiable. I mean, an absolute non-negotiable, like whatsoever. And I tell people that. I go, listen, I'm not, I understand you need a couple more paychecks before you can get started, but I just don't think that you're a fit and the ideal, the ideal demographic of people that we get the opportunity to work with. So, but I will give you a copy of my book. I'll send you to my YouTube channel. Keep me posted on your progress. And if you do everything I tell you to do in the book, you'll be able to start a podcast, on your own. So it's one or the other. They're either hiring us to get them launched, or I've got free resources everywhere available, as I have for the past 10 years. That is part of my responsibility of knowing more than most people know about the world of podcasting.
Everybody should have that sense of confidence wherever you land. We always teach people, don't run your business on the price, because somebody can always find somebody cheaper. Don't try to discount your prices and compete in the price war, because you'll never win. And that's not the business. You are who you are. You do what you do. You have your non-negotiables, and that's it. And I love that you have that, here's my book. Here's the free content all day long. You can dive into that absolutely free. And yes, launch a podcast. It will take longer, but there's people that will do the work, and most people won't, but they'll enjoy it and they'll learn something from it. But if you really know that you can take it and run with it, great. There'll be a few that will, but people, I think, will also respect that, and they need to do that in their business as well. Have that level of the non-negotiables, whatever business you're in, that here's what it is, here's how much it costs, here's what I do for you, here's some bonuses, really have that confidence. And I think we get that too, Sebastian. As a TV show host, TV podcaster, things like that, we really get this confidence of, you can get a whole lot of us for free. You can go to our channels and you can just dive in. But when you want to work with us, in person, via Zoom, whatever, there's a cost. It's our time. We're worth it. Here you go. And those who will, it's that yes. And they're not worried about, well, let me wait and let me get a discount, or, what's you're going to do a special for Black Friday. It's okay.
Yeah, no specials, no discounts. My mother calls, she pays the same price. That's just the way. And I want to touch on this, because there's a lot of confusion happening in the world of podcasting. A podcast, by definition, is an audio file uploaded to the internet to be consumed auditorily. That means we listen to it. So that's the true definition of a podcast. The word was derived from an iPod way back when. I'm dating myself. To be cast on an iPod. That's where the word actually. So the onset of the past couple of years, and Spotify has really started to try to amplify the term video podcast, which that doesn't even exist, and it's extremely redundant and an oxymoron. It 100% is, because the idea of it's one or the other. If you have a podcast that you're recording a video of the podcast and you're putting that on YouTube, you've got a YouTube video show, not a podcast. It's your podcast, yes, but it doesn't live. And I know YouTube's trying to really figure out this podcasting game, which I'll make the bold prediction right now, as I have all year long. That podcast feature will not make it on YouTube, because YouTube is a video platform. It is our new television. Podcasting is our new radio platform. And I think people confuse this so much. Is there a video component to a podcast? Absolutely, because most podcasts are being recorded remotely, and there's a video aspect of it, which also contributes to being able to create micro content. But this whole notion around, I want to start a video podcast, I almost hang up on people. This is ridiculous. And it's extremely extremely unpopular opinion, especially from the younger generation. People like my daughter's age. My daughter's 22. They're like, we consume things by watching them. Like, okay, cool, Junior, but I consume things by listening to them because my brain, like most people's, is if you send me a video, I think my brain goes, I got to watch it, even though I don't have to. But if you send me a link to a podcast episode, I hit play and I can start and stop and I can listen to it wherever I'm at with whatever I'm doing. So, and I want to, again, part of the responsibility of the craft is helping people really understand the reality of all that. There is enough work in and of itself just to record a podcast episode with the audio aspect of it that if nothing else was included with it, your hands would be absolutely full. So being able to, muddy the waters, if you will, I don't think serves people to the best of their ability.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm going to dive right in because I've been doing this podcast, but audio, TV at the same time for almost 4 years. And when I say podcast, since I'm interviewing you, Sebastian, I might as well have it on my television network. I might as well have the video part of this wonderful interview we're doing. Then when it goes to be an actual podcast, I pull out the MP3, upload it to Captivate, and there is the podcast. So I know there are people that will only ever listen to this as a podcast, but a separate entity. Since we're on camera, I know I can also get great repurposing and social media and YouTube and Apple TV and all that at the same time without having to do double work and have 2 different shows. So I know that the way I have it set up and for my television network, for those who do as well, works really well. Maybe what you're saying too is I shouldn't call it a TV podcast because that's an oxymoron. Part of it is a television show, but then when we pull out the audio, that's a podcast in its itself. Is that kind of what you're saying?
I think it's a TV show that's repurposed into a podcast episode more than anything.
That could work.
Where it's at. I mean, if you really look at any traction that's ever been gained based on just uploading YouTube and what I like to call posting and praying, have you ever gained any traction off of YouTube? Probably very minimal. Why? Because YouTube is designed with a specific strategy of being able to upload content to it. People go to YouTube for 2 reasons: to be entertained and to get their questions answered. If you can do all 3, well, you're in even better luck. But the structuring, that's why you see a majority of YouTube content that does very well is structured in a specific way. And I've been on that path for about 4 years now. And it's the hardest piece of content that I create because it requires a lot of my brain. It requires me planning out the entire episode. It requires the actual strategy of how YouTube expects content to be created. That's why when you click on a popular video, chances are there is some sort of hook being offered at the very beginning. If you tune into a video that's extremely popular, that thumbnail is extremely attractive to your eyeballs that made you actually click on it and pique your curiosity. So the notion of being able to just upload something to YouTube, well, because Justin Bieber got discovered there, why not? I think is an absolute complete waste of time. And I didn't always think that way before I became a YouTuber. My brother's a shrewd YouTube expert and just extremely good at what he does. He helps people launch channels and he got me started about 4 years ago after telling me for so long that I was doing it wrong. And then, the sibling rivalry, never wanted to listen to him on what I did. But when I started to listen to him is when I was able to really gain some traction. Traction means, do people actually watch your content? Are people actually subscribed to your to your podcast, to your YouTube channel? And are you getting paid from YouTube based on that content? And even more importantly, are people watching it and picking up the phone and calling you and saying, hey, I just watched a few of your videos and I need your help? All of those objectives have been able to be achieved because I actually started treating YouTube exactly the way that it's expected to be treated on how the content's created.
Way of getting the phone to ring.
What's that?
What is your best strategy to getting your phone to ring?
Showing up every day and making sure that you're posting valuable content that people actually need to hear, and making sure that you're in every place that people are actually active in. I'm very active on LinkedIn, very active on YouTube. I'm active on Facebook because it's kind of the backyard barbecue. Instagram still up for debate on whether or not, even though I did have a lead last week from Instagram. So, but it wasn't my content. I did an interview during Art Basel down here last week for another brand that has a creative studio here, and they created a reel and invited me to be a contributor on Instagram. So it by default went to my feed. So someone found me through there, but I spend a majority of my time on YouTube and on LinkedIn because it's where people are actually consuming content. It's where people see the content and message you and go, can we schedule a time to chat about starting a podcast? And that's all that I care about.
What do you do on LinkedIn that makes it worth it? Because I know a lot of people just post and post and post and hope that somebody will comment and reply. I have found that the audio apps work the best because when people hear me speak and hear me teach, when I go on speak on stages, that's one of my best ways of capturing new clients. I've loved Clubhouse until they've made all their changes. I've loved the audio rooms, the different social media. But
they ruined that thing, didn't they?
God. Yeah, jeez.
Talk about going to hell in a handbasket, boy. Rest in peace, Clubhouse. Rest in peace, Clubhouse. LinkedIn Audio's has
that's
definitely
what I do. LinkedIn Audio.
Yeah, LinkedIn Audio's got some longevity to it. I don't do a lot on LinkedIn Audio. I do a lot. How do you
utilize LinkedIn?
What's that?
How do you utilize LinkedIn to its best?
I post once a day, and I make sure that I'm providing something valuable that people want to know about that they don't know about. It's generally 9 times out of 10 related to podcasting. I make sure that it's not just a link that I'm sharing. I make sure I don't include links in my post. I make sure that there's something thoughtful said about what I'm doing. Carousels do really well, which is a document, usually a PDF that you'll upload that it acts as a kind of a slideshow. Those do very, very well. And posting once a day. And then more importantly is making sure that I'm engaging on other people's content on LinkedIn and leaving thoughtful comments and engaging with people and visiting their profile and connecting with new people and making sure I'm going to popular posts and leaving a thoughtful contribution in a comment on that post, because what people fail to realize is that when you comment on LinkedIn, it shows your name and your short bio right underneath that of exactly who's commenting. When you go look at someone's profile, LinkedIn sends them an email and a notification that Sebastian's viewed your profile. So there's a lot of touch points that people don't recognize on LinkedIn. And I think a lot of people are sleeping on LinkedIn. LinkedIn was the very first social media platform. Not a lot of people understand that. 2002, I think LinkedIn came on the scene, and I've been there since the beginning. And shortly after that was MySpace, and then the onset of Facebook and so on. But LinkedIn was the first player on the block, but it is a perpetual networking event that happens 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it's no nonsense with the content and the people that are on there. Facebook is an absolute, just again, backyard barbecue.
I like the way you say that. It's a perfect way to describe it. The backyard barbecue.
Yeah. And it's there and it's a great way. And, the business mastermind group that I'm part of is, based on a Facebook group. So there's a lot of components there that are valuable, but LinkedIn is a place where people are there to do business, and you can build new connections, relationships, and literally find anybody that you want to do business with. And every time I travel a lot, and anytime I'm in a new city, I go to LinkedIn and I type, who are my first connections in that city that I'm at, and is there an opportunity to connect with those people and grab a coffee?
That's a brilliant idea, Sebastian. That's just brilliant. As you travel, go to LinkedIn and see bikes. That's so smart. How do we find you on LinkedIn? Are you under the Launchpad or are you under Sebastian?
No, it's my name.
Sebastian Rusk?
Yeah, Sebastian Rusk, and also Podcast Launch Lab as well. Yeah.
It's in there. Okay, good. So I hope everybody will connect with you. I know I'm going to go over there and connect with you. I'm just under Aurea McGarry, and I've been there not since the beginning, but probably since like 2007 or something. And I always utilized it a lot when I was in direct sales, and it worked like a charm. Then it kind of took a sidestep to some other social boards that came, but I've been coming back to it now because the birth of what we've been doing so successfully with Clubhouse these last 3 years has been such a game changer. When you can talk on this app, I have made lifelong friends. How we got connected, lifelong friend, because I met him on Clubhouse, and then I'm so sad about what they're doing to it. Several of us went over to LinkedIn and said, let's start utilizing the audio app in LinkedIn, because we love to teach, coach, talk to people. And I find I don't want to lose that aspect because it works so well. It's like being a speaker every single day. But I love what you said about posting daily, because that's part of that consistency. When I was in a course for LinkedIn, they said you've got to do it every single day. You can't miss a day. And that's part of that commitment you make when you are a podcaster as well. You've got to commit to that once a week. You can't just drop one now and then. People have to have consistency. Do you agree with that or disagree?
Yeah, every day. Every day. Like, it's not that, this isn't hard. You just don't do it. You're just, if you're not posting every single day, the only thing in between you and posting every day are your stupid excuses on why you're not posting. That's it.
So true, so true. Make time. Get that weekly plan sheet out. Make time. Do it first thing in the morning, lunchtime, but you have that set time of day. And I know there's people that are very, very, they're proactive, like in advance. And I've never been one to know what I want to post a week or two out. But there are people that build their whole calendar once a month, and then there's a month. If that's your personality type and you can do that, great. I like to talk about what's relevant, what's happening. Maybe something's happening in the news. I can relate to my business or something like that. So I do like the spontaneity of being on the spot. Which way do you like to work? Do you like to plan it out for the month, or do you like to plan out for the day or the week?
Yeah, no, I never plan anything. I mean, what we do plan out is being able to make sure I've got an entire catalog of content available, that in the event I don't have something that I can put together that specific day, I still have something to go and post. So that's always a good backup of being able to do it. Old posts are a great way to do it. Going back a year, 6 months, a year, 2 years to content that I posted. I mean, you could even do it content you posted a month ago. Those people you're still reaching new people with the content. Usually for LinkedIn, I usually keep my content about 90% all podcast stuff. And then, I mix in a little bit of life, with all of that, or just experience and stories from all of that. But a majority of it is geared towards podcasting. I've got a lifetime of content, available based on what we've created over the past 10 years.
Sure. What is your favorite hobby?
My favorite hobby is very good tequila and sports.
What's your favorite sport?
Probably football, and then basketball would be next. I'm a diehard Chicago Cubs fan. So, and I've been, over the past 4 or 5 years, started to get into soccer a little bit. I didn't understand it, so I watch a little English Premier League, only because it comes on at 7:30 in the morning on Sundays, and it entertains me until football starts at 1 o'clock. So
and who's your favorite football team?
The Miami Dolphins, baby.
Well, there you go. Of course. Yeah. You never know. So, there's so many transplants. Florida has one big transplant bowl from New York and Chicago.
Unfortunately, yeah. California and New York have ruined it, but we can blame our governor for that.
When I first moved to Florida many years ago, I remember there was more Yankee fans in the stadiums than any of the local, baseball. I don't even know the local baseball teams of Florida. Yeah. It was always like, go Yankees.
Well, the headquarters is in Tampa, so I mean,
right, exactly.
Well, not headquarters. I'm sorry, spring training.
Spring training.
It brings a lot of Yankees fans, but Yankees fans are pretty universal. Unfortunately, I hate the Yankees with a passion.
Well, we're not going to go there, but it's all good. So I'm more of an Olympics fan. I used to be a figure skater, so I love the Olympics. Love the stories. Like you love stories. I love the stories behind it.
Yeah, my mom loves the Olympics. She the opening ceremony. I'm not an Olympics person. Yeah, I always want to get excited because I'm a sports fan, and I just come up empty every time that opening ceremony starts, and I'm like, wow, this is neat. About 5 minutes of that, I was like, okay. Next.
Done.
Is a new episode of 90 Day Fiancé out yet? Yeah.
Well, that's why there's so much versatility in this world. Well, let me ask you this as we close up and give you your final thoughts. What is the future that you foresee for podcasting and for Sebastian Rusk?
I think the future of podcasting is it's here to stay. I don't think that robots are going to replace human interaction and relationships and relationship building and content creation. I think that, at the onset of AI and all the talk around it, these are tools and resources available to come in and start doing things better than we've already been doing them, and to make life easier, as technology has over the past 2 decades.
Yeah.
What's next for me is continue to evolve into the best version of myself and impact as many people as I possibly can, and helping them better understand the power of being able to step into a completely different version of themselves because they decided to start a podcast, because they started to start their thing, whatever that may be. I've got a unique gift for being able to empower people, and I want to be able to continue to double down on that and leverage it as much as possible. My speaking business keeps me pretty busy. So being able to continue to expand that and figure out what's next, it's a huge driver for the growth of our agency. So it's a huge priority. And the comedy aspect really ties into the speaking, because the majority of the comedy stuff that I'm doing is tied in with the talks that I'm booked to do. So really being able to focus on what it takes to continue to double down on everything that I've already been doing, realizing I don't know anything, and that I'm completely open to whatever is next. I always say I want what God wants, and that's just the reality of how my brain and life operates, because we don't know anything. I mean, that's true knowledge, right? It's some philosophical, philosopher said that at one point in time, and I really do believe that we don't know anything at all. And the time is right now. Like we always talk about, I'll do it one day, and one day just doesn't exist. One of my favorite quotes is from Martin Luther Sr. And the quote is, "How soon not now becomes never." And it's so relevant to life every single day, because there's so many things that we put off and procrastinate with. But when we actually commit to saying, I'm going to do this because I said that I was going to do it, and then we actually go and do it, that's where the results actually happen. I think people fail to realize that action creates momentum, momentum creates results, and results are exactly what we thrive for and what we live for. Because when we get that result, our brain goes, wow, that was awesome, let's go do it again. And I think if people can just tune into that. If you hate your job, quit. If you're miserable with your spouse, leave them. Life is way too short to sit in a monotonous type of environment, whether it's work and personal or whatever it may be. You got one shot at this thing called life. So if you had an inclination to get out there and go do your thing, make that life shift. I heard a quote the other day from Alex Hermosi, brilliant business and marketing mind. If you don't follow him, make sure you do. He said that if you want to inflict change, get out of your environment, because your existing environment is continuing to remind you of old behaviors. The only way to disrupt that pattern is to move. If you're stuck in a rut and you're still in that same apartment, move out.
Yeah.
If you're in a relationship that you know is not working, it's not going to fix, and it's not going to get better. If it ain't good today and it wasn't good yesterday, chances are it's probably not going to be. There is a requirement of you to take action, to step into whatever is next, and it is absolutely terrifying. You know what's more terrifying? Staying exactly where you are.
Yeah, staying the same.
Terrifying. That's my biggest fear. I read a book called Fresh Wind, Fresh Fire from a guy named Jim Cymbala. Started the Brooklyn Tabernacle with his wife, which is still an active church in Brooklyn, New York. And the story of the Brooklyn Tabernacle is absolutely unbelievable, because that part of Brooklyn was not the Brooklyn we know today in the 70s. It was full of prostitutes and drug addicts, and they started with, and it was miracle after miracle after miracle that this church actually became a reality. But there was one quote that he said in that book that really stuck with me. And he said, my biggest fear is going through my entire life without God showing up mightily on my behalf. And I thought, whoa. Wow. And if that doesn't get you going, I don't care what you believe, who you believe, where you believe. You got to believe in something bigger than us. We're just a bag of bones wandering around, figuring out what's next as human beings here. So I think about that a lot. And when I don't feel like it, guess what? Here's a big news flash. You are never going to feel like. I just had this conversation with my girlfriend this morning about working out and exercising. And I'm like, she does not like exercising whatsoever. And I said, neither do I. No one does. And I'm at the gym and I'm sweating and I'm in just the thick of hell. I'm in the depths, the seventh chamber of hell on the treadmill. And I called her and I said, hey, get up, go for a walk. Just get outside. It's a beautiful day here in Miami. 30 minutes. You'll be glad that you did. I know it's my day off. I'm in my warm bed. I understand that. And let me guess, you don't feel like it. You are never going to feel like it. But I guarantee you, when you get done with that workout, you're going to tell yourself, I feel incredible. And that is an undefeated
Did it
result
work?
that I received. Yeah, she did. She just texted me that she went for a 30-minute walk. And I had a phenomenal workout, and I'm kicking, screaming expletives all the way to the gym on the treadmill, just mad at the gym. And then I just did it because we've got a decision. Stay where we are, remain complacent, keep doing what we're doing, or decide to step into a different version of ourselves, realizing that there's something there for us when we make that conscious decision to step into a completely different version of ourselves. And it's it's uncomfortable, and it's full of fear and pain. And so is life. And so is staying in the same place you are.
It goes back to, the definition of insanity. What you're doing, expect different results, and got to make those changes. And it reminds me of Mel Robbins too, that talks about that 5-second rule and don't hit the snooze button, and just you got to just
very effective. Yeah. Very that's a great book. If you haven't read the 5-second rule, Mel Robbins,
amazing.
Definitely do that. Fantastic book.
Really is. All that same mindset. And I'm a big believer too in not going through this life alone, getting that buddy. Like your girlfriend was lucky to have you to say, hey, get up. You're never going to feel like it. The bed's cozy, but we need that life partner, whether it's a best friend or a mother, a sister, a daughter, just somebody that you partner with to say, hey, this is where I want to go. I want to make a change.
Well, I mean, I know I've got the impact. We've only been together for like 3 or 4 months, and I know the impact that I've had on her life. That's why she fell in love with me, is the impact that I'm able to, I didn't even know. I didn't do anything. I just showed up.
You're you.
God delivered me to you. You did whatever you're going and doing, but I know that she's extremely receptive to the things that I have to say and the encouragement that I have to give. And if I don't, it's now my responsibility to be able to say, I know for a fact I can get her into being an active daily exerciser if I encourage her and create opportunities for us to do it together, whatever the case may be on there. And I think that when you're not showing up, knowing that that's available, you're just grossly negligent to being able to provide value for that other person's life and bring joy to your own life.
Sebastian, such great words of wisdom. You have been absolutely phenomenal guest. I hope everybody just watches this and rewatches it. And then, yes, we will be uploading this as a podcast. So people that love to listen to it while they're on that treadmill will be able to do that and experience you as well. So I want to put up, if anybody would like to, a very special website where people can connect with you and make that call so they don't stay the same. If you feel like you resonated with Sebastian, give him a call, podcastlaunchlabnow.com. It's right up on the screen, but if you're listening in, it's podcastlaunchlabnow.com. Closing words, Sebastian. If somebody has been thinking about doing podcasts, thinking about making changes, but they're right on the fence, give them that last minute or two of reasons why they should, or maybe somebody who really might be thinking about it, but not, that this would not be for them to, because that's just as important to know who should do it and when, and who shouldn't, and there's other things that would work better.
I think that if you've had that inclination, somebody's told you, you saw a sign, you have that gut feeling, whatever you want to call it or refer to it as, or whatever your experience has been, to start a podcast. If you've had that inclination, someone's told you, that is reason enough to at least get in there and figure out and sort out some sort of proof of concept to see if you actually like what you're doing, and are you going to enjoy this process of being a podcaster, and then more importantly, what's on the other side of it. I think that we don't consider what is on the other side of the outcome. I think we stay so stuck in complacency and so stuck in the what ifs and the one days that we never actually take action and get into the trenches and figure out. You may love it, you may hate it, but you don't know unless you actually start. The time is right now. Tomorrow's not guaranteed. Yesterday is long gone. We have right now. I love to say that the time is now, because it really, really is. One day is never going to arrive, ever.
Nope.
One day and someday don't exist.
No, someday is not a day of the week.
That's
is for
correct.
Sure. And school is never out for the pro. So even if you think you've got it all together, school is never out for the pro. The people that stop learning, stop living. You have to keep learning. And you said that just a little bit ago on this show about the education and learning and wanting to know more and surrounding yourself with people smarter than you, and keep on growing until the day we take our last breath. Sebastian, thank you so much for being on this show. I so appreciate you. You've been amazing. Keep doing what you're doing, and I know you are going to. There is nothing stopping you. And I hope people will chime into you. Podcastlaunchlabnow.com. And such a really friendly guy to have a phone call with. And I will tell it like it is to them. Whether you're a good fit or not, you will know after one phone call. Sebastian, thank you so much for being on Get Celebritized. I hope you have a wonderful, wonderful holiday season and a happy new year.
Thanks so much. Same to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Sebastian. Until next time, signing off from Aurea McGarry and Get Celebritized. We hope you've learned some few nuggets on how you can earn more, live more, and give back more. Thank you for being here. See you next time. Bye for now.